But from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
The president would not pardon or commute the sentence for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no. And I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
His son, Hunter, is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son, Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. I've been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
What changed?
You have said repeatedly yourself since the election, the president has said for months, no pardon was coming. I wanted to ask you, could those statements now be seen as lies from the American people? Is there really a credibility issue here given now this announcement?
First of all, one of the things that the president always believes is to be truthful to the American people. That is something that he always truly believes. And if you see the end of his, I assume that you've read his statement, and you look at the end of that statement, and he actually says that in the first line in the last paragraph, and respects the thinking and how the American people will actually see this in his decision making. And I would encourage everyone to read in full the president's statement. I think he lays out his thought process. He lays out how he came to this decision. He came to this decision this weekend. So let's be very clear about that. He says it himself. It's in his voice. He said he came to this decision this weekend. And he said he wrestled with this. And because he believes in the justice system, but he also believes that the war politics infected the process and led to a miscarriage of justice.
I want to understand two things, because I respect it as a parent. I understand why he would do it, but I wanted to understand why lie about it for so long.
I'd stop calling it a lie.
Okay, why repeatedly say you're not going to and you do? And secondarily, for the part of this country, half of it that doesn't support Biden, doesn't know him personally, doesn't get to have phone calls, and they're just looking at a system that seems like it only benefits the people who are in power.
I'm going to say,
what precedent does that set?
Well, here's what it says. It's a precedent for all of us to open our eyes, because we've elected someone who is in a similar situation, who didn't have a drug problem, who knew what he was doing, who clearly stood and said, I can do this, and he did it. So I think, for many, many reasons, this is very different than any other situation that we have ever dealt with, because when we're talking about who gets a pardon and who doesn't get a pardon, this man, I think Biden had no intentions of pardoning Hunter. And I think the more stuff that went down, I think he said, well, why am I busting my behind to stay straight and do this when nobody else is, when no one else is doing it?
Therefore, every day of Hunter Biden's Delaware case, rows and rows of that courtroom were filled with Biden family members, including the First Lady. It was clear that they were there to support him. They felt that the case was unfair, and his lawyers thought there was a chance they could convince the jury of that as well. We spoke to at least one juror who did ultimately convict Hunter. They said that they believe the case was, quote, a waste of taxpayer money, but the prosecutors proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. But, of course, Hunter faced a second case in Los Angeles, and just hours before that trial was supposed to start, he entered a sort of unusual plea deal where he pleaded guilty to all the charges he faced. He was looking at a possible sentence of up to 17 years in prison, hefty fines surpassing $1 million. You don't enter a plea deal like that unless you were confident you were going to get some form of clemency. So this is only surprising to people who have not been paying attention to the facts of this case and the support Hunter has received from his family.
And David Weiss, who is a special counsel prosecuting Hunter Biden, has now reacted.
That's right. In a filing, he's sort of firing back at some of the president's statements about the nature of the case. Here, Weiss is trying to defend his work. He says that, quote, in announcing this pardon yesterday, President Biden said his son was selectively and unfairly prosecuted. But Weiss said there was, quote, none and never has been any evidence of vindictive or selective prosecution in this case. They also accurately point out that 2 judges previously rejected Hunter's claim that he was selectively prosecuted. This is significant because it's Weiss's first statement since these pardons were announced. Not surprising that he is trying to defend his case and the work of his team.
Yeah. We need to do compare and contrast here. So Joe Biden's gotten asked about, talking about law and order. He's gotten asked if he would pardon his son. He has said no.
Right.
He got asked if he would commute the sentence of his son. He has said no. On the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who has said that he will pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. Yeah. They're not even his sons. They're just sons of bitches.
Oh, I actually talked to Joe Biden about this. When he was on the show, I told him I hoped he pardoned Hunter.
I remember.
You did. I went to speak at the Biden Institute in Delaware like a month later, and we talked on the phone, and I told him I hoped he pardoned Hunter. I left him a handwritten note at his desk at the University of Delaware and told him I hoped he pardoned Hunter. And the reason I thought it was important is because I wanted him to hear from people who support him and respect him, which I do, that some of us, I'd say most of us, think it's okay for him to pardon Hunter because of what you just said, that so many of the people who committed this crime do not get prosecuted. Imagine the guilt that Joe Biden has to live with, thinking that his son, his only surviving son, is getting prosecuted because he is his son.